Thank you for joining me for this reading focused on the UK political landscape. I felt it would be interesting to read the runes on the situation now that the new Keir Starmer government has been in office. The Labour government has been in office for over 100 days, and quite a few are displeased with the way it has gone, and some have been shocked by quite a few things that they would not expect of a Labour government. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now and show you the runes that I pulled on this issue. Just make that bigger. There we are, much better. So the first thing that I noticed is that all of the runes that came out are in the reversed position. And the way I read them, there are 4 different ways that most of the runes can fall, which have different meanings and kind of offer different frameworks of meaning, because I also allow my intuition to come in when I am reading as I go along. So at the centre of the reading, we have Wanyo, also known as Vend, and this speaks of winning and also of turning points, and any new leadership, in a way, any new government is a turning point. Although we do know that at the current time, there are many governments in many countries that are not persisting for any length of time. It just seems to be the way things are going at the moment. And we are, of course, as we all know, in times of great change. And I have a feeling personally that governments are kind of not keeping up in a way. They're not evolving sufficiently with the times, although that is a big task and it's a big ask. So I'm not necessarily critical of that, even though I've got to say I am disappointed very much so in the new Keir Starmer government. But when Wanyo falls this way, looking like an angular pea standing on its head, then what we are talking about that what they've won, of course they have, but what they are not keeping themselves in a winning position. They are not maintaining the will of the people. They are not maintaining the social license to operate. And I feel that as we go into November, particularly the early part of November, this is going to become increasingly clear, not just through the budget, but through other things that come to our attention that leave people feeling, many groups, quite disenfranchised, as though they just don't matter. And they expected far better. It does feel as though there is a lot of chaos around this period going into November. I do expect that in the near future, there will be a change of leadership, that will, the need and the obvious, for this becoming obvious as something that has to happen, I feel will come up quite suddenly, changing from general dissatisfaction to something greater. And part of this will be that the will of the people is no longer behind it. And there is a sense then of this being a government that is very much undermined. And that undermining will appear on the scene, I feel also, in a way that is both stark and sudden and cannot be ignored. So I do feel that there will be a change of leadership. I think that a woman will take over. But I also feel that that leadership will not be sustainable. I feel we are in extremely turbulent times politically in the UK and in a tremendous number of countries in the world. It kind of is part of the territory at the moment. So perhaps we should only be shocked if we feel surprised in the current times. But looking at the runes, Manas, Mother on the left, pointing towards the left, gives us a key to what is perceived to be wrong, the lack of humanitarian qualities, the lack of caring. The lack of caring for vulnerable groups is a big part of this. But overall, it's a lack of prioritization of the needs of many people, particularly those who are in positions where it is hard for them to do anything about their situation. So I am expecting this to impact more than it already has on those who are elderly, those who are very ill, those who are disabled, or those who just have needs, their basic needs are not being met, despite them doing everything that they possibly can to make their lives work. It is very hard, isn't it, for people on the lowest level of income, for example, even if they work full time. Sometimes even if they have 2 jobs, it can be very hard. And I feel that it is these kinds of people that will increasingly be feeling forgotten. I feel in the background, there is also, we know that there is terrible turbulence and splits and schisms in the Tory party. But in the background, I feel there is now a greater awareness of grassroots groups that are coming more to the fore. I know I talked about this about 3 years ago when I completed a reading on the UK political situation. And I felt that there would be new groups, new parties, more independent MPs, perhaps clustering together, that would become part of the picture. And I feel that there is really now the time is right for an upsurge in this. I felt that upsurge would have come sooner than it has, to be honest, but it feels very much as though it is there now and it is swelling and gathering power. Thorisaz on the right is all about barriers, boundaries, the giant within, giant forces, the power that we have, and the ability to balance those boundaries. And when the rune falls this way, there is something that needs to happen at ground level, which we can also interpret as grassroots level, that is ripe for happening. And of course, it may take some time for such things to develop into a real force. But there is a power here that wants to come through. And when a power wants to come through, it does find a way. It may take a little time, but there is growth in what some might call, when I say alternative politics, I mean outside of the 2-party system. So within that, we would include independent MPs. We would include grassroots movements. We would, of course, include the Green Party. We're talking here, in England, about the smaller clusters of enthusiasm that are developing more into powers to be reckoned with, that are demanding a voice. And I feel that this is quite an interesting reading from the perspective of how it is going with the Labour Party, and also the backdrop that they are existing within or against, because we have the international position, and I know many, myself included, are quite upset about the way certain things have happened. For example, demanding a ceasefire in Israel, which to me is absolutely the right thing to do, whilst simultaneously continuing to send weapons to Israel. I find that difficult, and I know that many others do too. And I know that many people hoped for better from this government. But I do feel that the days of Keir Starmer as leader are limited, and I feel that this will become clear in November, probably the early part of November, and it will become increasingly clear how this government is undermined by the lack of the will of the people, or the will of the people being against them, those who voted for them not much more than 100 days ago. I feel many are withdrawing their social license and bringing their allegiance, looking around for what other group, what other political party, political force that they can offer their allegiance to, that they feel better represents what they want from their politicians. And as I've already said, I feel that a woman will take over, but I feel that the task that is handed to her will be one that is almost impossible, because how do you paper over so many cracks that have appeared so quickly? But I also feel that the attitude will not be what people want to see at this time. So thank you for joining me for this reading. I will be doing a general reading on the themes and trends for November. I also offer personal readings, both rune readings and also mediumship readings for evidence of survival and communication with loved ones. More details about the readings that I offer can be found at my website, K Cook Spirit Wings. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you will join me sometime in the future.